Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for jumping on. So this morning we will be continuing part 3 of our AMH series. So I'll just dive straight into the questions. The first question for this morning's live is, what do you use an AMH test for?
So AMH test is used mainly for 7 purposes. The first one is a fertility screening, and the second one is fertility monitoring, and the third one is the diagnosis of menopause, and the fourth one is the diagnosis of PCOS, and the fifth one is a fertility preservation. The next one is a fertility treatment, and seventh is IVF. So there's 7 purposes for use of AMH: fertility screening, fertility monitoring, diagnosis of menopause, diagnosis of PCOS, then fertility preservation, fertility treatment, and IVF.
Thank you, Dr. Asti. In that there, you just mentioned that you can use AMH testing for the diagnosis of PCOS. How do you do that?
Yes, so in terms of PCOS, women with PCOS have very high AMH. So the AMH cutoff in the future probably will be incorporated one of the criteria for diagnosis of PCOS. At the moment, it is not part of that criteria. So in PCOS, you have 2 of those 3 things. Either you have irregular period maybe every 2-3 months, and symptoms of high androgen, and also on ultrasound you have multiple follicles, so multiple antral follicles, which means you have more than 20 antral follicles on your ovaries. So if you have 2 out of these 3, you are diagnosed with PCOS. But AMH is used as additional test to diagnose or screening for PCOS. For example, in women with a PCOS, AMH is generally higher than 25 picomole liters. So if you have symptoms of PCOS, like irregular periods, symptoms of high androgen, and if your AMH is low, it's very unlikely that's PCOS, or you had the PCOS in the past, now it's resolving. So what happened, like we discussed yesterday, women with PCOS have a PCOS when they're younger. As they get older, their egg reserve drops, their antral follicle number drops, their AMH drops, then PCOS symptoms resolve. They start having regular period. When they do scan, the ovaries don't look like PCOS ovaries, and symptoms of high androgen will go away. So because their egg reserve is dropping. So women who had a PCOS in the past, and when they're older, when they measure their AMH, if it's low, let us say their AMH is 15 picomole liters, probably their PCOS is now resolving. So, or they don't have a PCOS, they were diagnosed with PCOS, very unlikely they have PCOS. Why? Because in women with PCOS, like we said yesterday, they have multiple follicles on their ovaries, and then those antral follicles produce high level of AMH. So on the scan, they have at least 20 follicles on each ovary, maybe 40, 60, 70 follicles on the ovary, and those follicles should produce AMH. So that's why AMH levels should be high. In the past, when ultrasound was not developed, like let us say 50, 60, 70, like even 100 years ago, PCOS was diagnosed by the person called Levenstein. So that person, when they did the operation, he could see lots of tiny follicles, and he thought these were tiny cysts. This is why he said polycyst, multiple cystic ovaries. So, and actually these are not cysts, these are antral follicles. Now we know that's antral follicles, that's normal. Just quantity of antral follicles high, and this is why these antral follicles producing high AMH levels. Yeah, so in PCOS, you have one of the tests you do if you're not quite sure whether it's PCOS or not PCOS.
Thank you, Dr. Asti. And similarly, how do you use an AMH test to diagnose early menopause?
Yeah, so in menopause, generally in diagnosing of menopause, you use AMH because in menopause, 3 things happen. All 3 should happen. First, your AMH drops less than 0.6. So second is the menstrual period stops fully for more than 12 months. And the third is when you measure FSH levels higher than 30 milliunits. So you can repeat FSH a couple of times to be sure, because there's a huge variation in FSH levels. So if these 3 things happen, then you diagnose women with menopause. So if this things happen before the age of 40, then you diagnose women with premature ovarian insufficiency. If this happens between the age of 40 to 45, you diagnose women with early menopause. If this happens between the age of 45 to 54, you diagnose with menopause. If it happens after the age of 55, you diagnose them with late menopause. This is why AMH is a critical, integral part of diagnosis of menopause, because menstrual period can stop for various reasons, including in PCOS. So, and if it is truly menopause, then in addition to having no period, you have a zero AMH and plus high FSH.
Thank you, Dr. Rusty. And how do you use AMH tests for fertility screening?
So the fertility screening means establishing your baseline fertility. So if you, for females, you establish your baseline fertility. We are not even talking about infertility. You are not even trying to conceive. We're talking about establishing your baseline fertility and predicting your future fertility for next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. How is your fertility is going to be like? That's called screening. So the fertility, and I actually encourage all women after the age of maybe 20 or 25 to do fertility screening and to establish their own individual baseline fertility by doing only two things. So AMH test and pelvic ultrasound scan with antral follicle count, AFC. So, and maybe you should repeat twice. So let us say you do AMH test to establish your current egg reserve, and pelvic ultrasound scan for two purposes. One is to establish your AFC, antral follicles, that should correlate with AMH. It should be very similar to AMH in picomoliters in AMH. So, and also you do scan to establish your uterine health, to make sure that you are not developing adenomyosis, endometriosis, endometrial polyps, uterine fibroids. That's you do that as a baseline. Maybe after 3 months to 6 months, you repeat it again. You do again AMH test, and you again do antral follicle count on the scan, and also you check your uterus. So when you look at your AMH levels and AFC levels, you can actually tell your baseline egg reserve. You can tell your baseline egg reserve is very high, like in PCOS, or your baseline egg reserve is average, or your baseline egg reserve is very low. Your AMH is so low, antral follicle is so low. So that's you establish. Then you can predict how it's going to be in 5 years or 10 years. So, and or 15 years. If you're doing it at the age of, let us say, 25, you can predict next 20 years until the age of 45. So that helps you to plan your future fertility. It helps you to make strategic decision whether you should do this the career professional projects first, or you should do fertility first. For example, if you have very low egg reserve, you may prioritize your fertility over all other things if it's important for you. For example, you can preserve your fertility if you can't get pregnant by freezing eggs or freezing embryos, or if you can get pregnant, you can get pregnant and solve this fertility planning and having baby plans early. Or if you have a high egg reserve, if you have a PCOS, then you don't need to worry too much. You can maybe wait another 5 years or 10 years before you start trying to conceive, before you, if necessary, if you can have a fertility treatment if you're starting later. So that helps to establish your baseline. For example, if you do AMH twice, 3 months apart, you add these two measurements plus divide by 2. Let us say your AMH is once 16, and next time it was 18. You add this and you divide by 2. Yes, so and so you can tell what is actually your average. Same for AFC. Let us say your AFC is 20 once, then 18, and next time you add 20 plus 18 and divide by 2. That's together, they should really come close to each other, correlate, and that's establish. So your egg screens and establish your fertility. We are not talking about infertility. Yeah? So it's important not to mix. Fertility means that whether your ovaries will be functioning when you're ready to have kids, and your uterus is healthy enough to carry the pregnancy or gives you a good chance of implantation. Infertility means that you're already trying and you're not getting pregnant, for 6 months or 1 year. So that's different. It's very multifactorial. But we are here talking about fertility screening. So if you have run out of egg reserve, you have run out of fertility. Yeah, so that's why AMH is a tool, good tool for fertility screening. Why? Because its decline is predictable. So it doesn't just drop. It doesn't say your AMH, you got 20, like after 3 years it becomes 0. No, it never happens like this, because unless you have a surgery on your ovaries, remove a lot of sleeping eggs as a part of surgery on ovaries, or have a chemo radiotherapy, we know if you have AMH of 20 picomoliters, so next 20 years gradually you will be producing eggs. Yes, the quality it declines, for sure it declines. That you need to take this into account. You are making fertility plans, but AMH gives you prediction. Approximately, we can't tell for each person exactly when they run out of eggs, but approximately how long you will be producing eggs for.
Thank you, Dr. Asti. It seems like the AMH test is a great tool for women to be able to monitor their fertility and their egg reserve. My final question for the live this morning is, does your AMH level fluctuate?
Yes, so AMH levels fluctuate naturally. Like we said, anything in nature goes up and down. We call variation or fluctuation. So a natural variation of AMH is 30%. Let us say if your AMH is 6 once, next time it may be 7, next time it may be 5. That's natural variation. But in a short-term fertility, infertility treatment, we don't have to repeat AMH twice when you're doing IVF or infertility treatment. Why? Because whether your AMH is 5 or 6 or 7, it's saying same thing. It means you have low egg reserve. So, but in a long-term prediction, it's important to repeat, because let us say your AMH is 15 once, because of variation, next time it's 12. Then there's a huge difference. And if you project to next like 10 years or 15 years, it can give an error by 2-3 years. So this way, if you repeat twice, like 15 plus 12, and then divided by 2, which is like 13.5, that's average AMH. So that's there's a natural variation. Same for antral follicle count. Antral follicle count varies by approximately 30%.
Thank you so much, Dr. Asti. That does conclude our live stream this morning. We will be resuming tomorrow with part 4 of our AMH series. So thank you so much, Dr. Asti, for your expertise in this area. And as always, the screen recording of this live will be published to Dr. Asti's social media channels on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you so much, everyone, for jumping on.
Thanks, Gabby. Thanks, everyone, for joining. Thank you.